Hello, welcome to Pensions 10 with me, David Brooks, and my colleague Adam Bexson. This week we take a look at the Milburn report, we talk about AI, and finally we make a note of the big day for dashboards. Okay, Adam, first story this week we're going to look at the Milburn report, which came out last week, I think, and looking at young people in the workplace and the implications for retirement savings. So, what are your thoughts and takeaways from that report?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, it's more young people who aren't in the workplace. So it was about 1 million, and they use the acronym NEET, so not in education, employment, or training. Um, and to put it in context, if we look at proportions, that's about 1 in 8 people of that age, so 16 to 24, aren't in education, employment, and training. And the article was talking about this as a lost generation, which has a few issues with respect to actually getting those people starting to take part in the economy. But it did make me think about a few things. So the Scottish Widows Retirement Report came out recently, and that looked at vulnerable people. Now, this was in their report, it was looking more at people who stopped paying into a pension or started paying in less. It's hard for them to get back into it. I kind of thought, well, actually, you're probably going to get the same for this group of people who might be a little bit disenfranchised. So delaying starting to pay in is going to have quite a significant impact. It did also make me think again about the fact that auto enrolment and everything associated with that is looking at employment. When actually what we've seen over the last few years is a bit of a change in the way that our economy operates. The gig economy, lots more people becoming self-employed. And I know it's something that we're talking about and thinking about a bit more, but it did highlight to me how much of a gap that self-employed group is when we look at auto enrolment and those kind of different areas.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I'd say the Pensions Commission also sort of highlighting this as well. Um, the issue with the way the pension system is linked, like you say, is linked to employment. And so if you're not in the employment sector, then the chances are you're not saving. And
Yeah.
those early year loss. I think the one framing of the Milburn report that stuck out to me, which is kind of a mistake, is this kind of the problem with people working longer at the other end, not creating opportunities for the younger people. And I think that framing is incorrect and needs to be addressed. I think I've seen it quite a lot. So I think it's the lump of labour fallacy, the belief that for people to get young people to get jobs, old people need to retire, and that isn't true. There isn't. There aren't necessarily people at the topper end holding up recruitment for the younger end. I think that's kind of a framing that I've seen, which is inappropriate. So I mean, again, that impacts on retirement policy and pensions policy because you're talking about people not saving enough to be able to retire and those kind of things. So yeah, it's an interesting problem. I don't know how we solve it though, unless we do something with the state system, which means a larger state pension in some way to help people in those early years, or there's some other, because we already have in the state pension you can get credits if you're a carer, or if you're claiming child benefit and some other things, not necessarily earning. But what are we saying that for some people, if you are looking for a job but you can't find a job and you're under 24, that we give you some kind of credit toward the state pension or some other pension? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty unlikely, isn't it? Kind of moving towards that, and any significant improvement of the state pension when we spent 20 years now working on auto enrolment and getting that kind of focused a little bit more. Kind of coming back to what you were saying as well about people who are working longer, so carrying on working maybe past state retirement age. I don't think that's always financial as well. If you look at people as they get closer to the point of stopping working, I've spoken to loads of people who could afford to retire. Actually, I'm not ready, or I'm not prepared from a kind of social or self-worth perspective to stop working because a lot of my identity is tied to my employment. So I think it isn't just the pound coins aspect of getting ready for retirement that needs a bit more focus. I think it's getting us ready as a people. just to get ready there.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. Yeah, I've seen the same thing when I do a few member presentations, and you do talk to people. They're like, "Well, I'm 66, and I'm going to be 67 next year. My wife's 62, or there's some life. There could be many other lifestyle reasons. We want to retire at the same time. So if I go now, well, I'm just going to be hanging around waiting for her to come home from work every day or something. I'd rather, we're in this routine. I'm quite fit and healthy. I quite enjoy my job, or they have a lot of worth, because the experience they've built up, they feel some value in still doing that. I think that's fantastic. I think that's something to be encouraged in a way. I want people with experience and skills and the ability and the drive to do it, to carry on. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely. Dave, can you give us a bit more of an insight into this week's news with respect to AI?
I can. AI, the word on everyone's lips all the time. Yes, so the regulator, pensions regulator that is, has issued a bit of guidance note aimed at trustees and providers into the use of AI in the workplace. We're obviously seeing it happening. It's a tricky one. I think it's a tricky one for the regulator because they're not an AI regulator, and they admit that themselves. They're a pensions regulator. They're not necessarily an expert in tech, and it feels a bit like the guidance around cyber risk and the guidance around scams to some extent as well. These are kind of areas that just come into fraud, cyber, these kind of things come into the pensions ecosystem, and we've got to work out how we're going to take advantage of them and how we do it properly. So the guidance is yes, aimed at trustees and providers, saying yes, we know you're using AI, and many firms have been working out how the best ways to deploy it over the last few years. With varying degrees of confidence and success, I would imagine, and noting it has potentials for improvement around member experience, for engaging with the scheme, getting information, but also behind the scenes for providers, the efficiencies around admin, perhaps actuarial work as well. And they seem to major on admin in the guidance. I've probably seen more AI development in the actuarial space, trying to package up processes and these kind of things. So it's very much it's very much a throat clearing, I think, from the regulator, saying that we're aware of this. Trustees, you need to make sure you're using it in the right way, and you're sure you've got the governance and the guardrails in place. And that's another one of the words everyone uses at the moment, guardrails. Anyway, I've realised I've just used it. But guardrails are in place to make sure that this stuff is being used appropriately. I think there are some worries about early adoption of chatbots and things like this to triage member experience, making sure that that's working correctly. There's a lot of fear around the other side with the fraud and scams, bad actors using AI to get into schemes and get access member benefits, these kind of things. So that's definitely something that I'm probably more conscious of than other things. Although it's conversely, you can use AI to detect fraud and scam activities as well. So it's an interesting space. There's a little bit less in there around how members are using AI. That's definitely something that we're thinking about in Broadstone, is around how members use our communications that we send out. Basically not reading it and just getting an AI to tell them what to do. Does that work for them? What's the impact if the AI is saying things that are incorrect? And also things like, scheme presence on the internet. If someone typed in ABC pension scheme, what's the retirement age, or what is this a good pension scheme, and what AI comes out with, I think are interesting areas, and definitely scheme needs to be more aware that people are doing this. Rather than talking to their friend down the pub, as it used to be the old days, or worry about what the friend down the pub says, it's going to be what is Copilot or ChatGPT saying.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I come across from time to time is people will place a bit more trust and value in something that AI has said or provided with compared to someone in the pub, as we used to years ago. I think that there can be a sense of credibility on something that's written down. So it is a challenge. It is a challenge how to get people to recognise that just because AI says it, just because ChatGPT says it, doesn't mean it's correct. I can put information in to get ChatGPT to give me an incorrect answer. And I'm sure everyone can in their field of specialism as well. So it is an area where there needs to be a lot of care.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, and as well, Dave, coming on to the last point for today, seen a huge number of accounts now linked to the pension dashboard. Can you give us a bit more of an update on that?
Yeah, like you say, just a quick one. So 70 million pension records are now connected to the pensions dashboard, which is a fantastic points we've reached in this process. So that's just connecting to the dashboard ecosystem. So yeah, just an incredible number. And there's a few more still to come. So the deadline to connect is 31st of October, and there's a system of schemes gradually going down in size to the 31st of October, when all the schemes that have to connect should have connected by. But it's going to be a very busy period, especially here in Broadstone Towers. We've got quite a few schemes on the smaller end, so they're going to be connecting over the summer, and then everyone's connected. So that's going to be quite a big day. I expect some kind of announcement around then to really make a bit of a noise that the dashboard is progressing well. What we do know from the latest update is that the dashboard won't be available to the general public. It's available in sort of beta testing phase, but it won't be available to the general public until at least April 2027. And if you ask anybody in the know, not me, but anybody in the know, it's likely to be later on in 2027. So not necessarily April the 1st or whatever, but yeah, but still a little way to go on the testing. The scale needs to up dramatically, but yeah, it's a really big moment.
Okay, so thanks for joining us today, everybody. Hope you've liked hearing about our take on this week's news, and we'll see you again next time.